Hey there. I am Jeremy Watkins, the Director of Financial Aid here at Elizabeth City State, and I want to share with you some information about your financial aid, how to keep up with it, how to make sure that you maintain it every year, and what you need to do to make sure that we can get your financial aid in place for you as early as possible each year. So here you have our location. We're in the Marion Thorpe building on campus. That's the same office or same building as student accounts, academic affairs, and the chancellor's office. So if you need to see us in person, that's where we are. But we also have a Zoom lobby now that you can join us via Zoom anytime. It is open to the public. The link is published on our website. You have it here as well. But if you need to find us, you can visit us in person online via the Zoom link. So the first thing I want to touch on is where to maintain your knowledge of your financial aid, and that is SelfService Banner. So it's a system that has pretty much all of your student information. That's where your schedule is, that's where you register for classes, that's where you can see your bill and your financial aid. So the first thing you want to do is familiarize yourself with your financial aid. We have our own tab on SelfService Banner called Financial Aid, and there you will find any requirements that are needed before you can be awarded. Also, once you've been awarded, if you have student loans, you'll see requirements out there for any student loan documents that are required for first-year students. So if you haven't done these already, you should have seen them. Your master promissory note and entrance counseling, those are required once, but they'll show up on Banner each year. So if you've not done those yet and you need your student loans, you'll see them as marked as needed. If you've already done them and then from the years going forward that you're here, you'll see those pop up as having been satisfied this year, but that'll show up there as well. You'll also see your financial aid status, whether or not your aid has paid or dispersed. So if you're looking at your financial aid award, that will show you a fall and spring financial aid award. And it's not dispersed there. It's just what shows you what your total award is for both semesters. If you look at your student account summary by term, which is under a different tab, that's going to show you your current charges. And at this point in the semester, that your aid has already dispersed. So early in the process, like back, say in May, if you were to look at your student account summary, it would make sure your charges for tuition and fees, room and board if you're on campus, but it wouldn't show your financial aid on that point yet because it had not paid. But financial aid now has paid started being dispersed in September. So you would see that under the student account summary, but your financial aid award is there throughout the year. So make sure that you keep up with that. And your financial aid is always in offered status until you have accepted your terms and conditions. So speaking of, once you've been awarded, what are your next steps? So this is all should have been taken care of already if you have financial aid for this year, but we want to start thinking about next year, because even though we just began fall, it's still early in your first semester here at ECSU, but the application process for financial aid for next fall of 21, is coming around the corner. So once you've been awarded each year, you make sure that you accept your terms and conditions, and we'll have a little preview of what those are, or a review of what those are here in a minute on another slide. But your awards will tell you what you have, and then you can compare that to your bill. So good practice for next year is looking at your status once you register and bills are sent out for spring semester. So right now, your charges and your financial aid on your student account summary are only going to reflect the fall. So it's going to be your fall tuition and fees, fall financial aid. Once you register for classes for spring and bills go out in November, then you'll be able to see your total charges and expected aid for that semester and make sure that you have enough aid. And if you don't, we'll talk about what some of your options are a little later as well. And then as a reminder for first-time borrowers, which you should be, or most likely are, this being your first semester here, you have to complete the entrance counseling and promissory note for the loans just once. So make sure you do that. So if you do have a loan and it's not paid out yet and you're still waiting for it, you're not sure what to do, check SelfService Banner. It may be those two documents need to be completed. If those are done and your aid still hasn't paid, check in with us and we can tell you exactly what's going on with your account. So how do you get your award each year? First step is always to complete your FAFSA, and that is available starting on October 1st. So make sure that you do your FAFSA early. Now, if you do your FAFSA on October 1st, we're not necessarily going to download it yet at that point. Each year, our student information system has to be updated with patches to allow us to process for the upcoming academic year. So we typically are working on installing that system in October, sometimes into November. But once all that gets set up, then we will get your FAFSA, and we'll start communicating with you once that process takes place. And usually that's before the end of the fall semester. Now, I know we're ending the fall semester a little early this time around, so you may not hear from us before classes are actually over, but hopefully you will. So as soon as we are able to download your FAFSA, we will let you know we have it and kind of what your next steps are, what to expect. So the FAFSA does have to be completed each year. So even though you've got financial aid for this fall and spring coming up, the FAFSA that comes open on October 1st is for the next fall. So fall 2021 and spring 2022. So make sure that you're doing that. And then also your FSA ID, that is your login and password for your FAFSA each year. Now, it's something you only use once a year, maybe at most, maybe 2-3 times, just to log back in and check on things. But you want to make sure that you have that. So if you're not sure what that is, go ahead and look that information back up. Hopefully you've saved it, have that ready, keep it somewhere safe and secure so that you can access it and go out and do your FAFSA on October 1st. If you've lost your password, then you can always retrieve it because your FSA ID is attached to your personal email that you gave when you did your FAFSA the first time. So if you're not sure what that is, check your email. You should have emails from FSA. They tell you when you submitted a FAFSA, when it's time to complete a new FAFSA, they'll send you links and reminders. So whichever email those are coming to, that's your login email. And if you can't remember your password, there's a way to recover it on the FAFSA website. And you can see that down at the bottom of this slide. It's fafsa.ed.gov. You can go there anytime. You can go there now if you're not sure what your FSA ID and password are. Try to log in and get that straightened out now so that you can go ahead and do your FAFSA as soon as it's available. So once you've completed your FAFSA, 1 out of every 3 students is selected for a process called verification. And basically what the Department of Education requires us to do is for those students that are selected, we have to get documentation to confirm that what you put on the FAFSA is accurate. Okay, so it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means that the department wants us to check in. It's basically a quality control to make sure that students are completing their FAFSA correct. And for 90% of our students, the information that is submitted is accurate. We just have to get the documentation, mark it that it's right, before we can put your financial aid award in place. Sometimes we have to make corrections, but by and large, the vast majority, we just collect the documents, confirm that the information does match what's on the FAFSA, and keep it moving. So make sure you're aware of that. And if you want, we have a page on our website that goes into some more detail about verification. But most of our students, you're going to be processed online. We provide an online portal with a partner, Pro Education Solutions, that allows you to complete the verification process online. So if you're ever selected, we'll send you an email to let you know that you've been selected, where to go, and when to log in to start that process. So again, the earliest you would hear from us on that process is probably going to be December or January of this year for the 2021-2022 financial aid year. But just know that, although some students, depending on some certain criteria, we might process you in-house, but if that's the case, we send you an email with instructions about what we need from you and your next steps as well. But the vast majority of students do go online. So most likely you may have been through verification this year. If not, you may be selected for next year. You may not. So this may not even apply to you. But just in case it does, this is here for you to be aware of. If you get that email, like, what's verification? Now you know at least what that is. The important thing is that you complete verification as early as possible. So as soon as we send you those notices, and as a first-time student, if you were selected for verification prior to like coming into this year, we send emails to your personal email as well as your school email. But as a continuing student, those emails are going to come to your ECSU email. So you want to make sure that you're checking that because that's our main mode of communication, because a lot of the things that we require that students do for financial aid, or that are required of us to make sure that you do for financial aid, can be a little technical and require explanation, and we have to disclose certain pieces of that. So we do a lot of communicating in writing because we're required to. So we'll send a lot of emails, but we try to make those as simple as possible. So just make sure you're checking those, because verification is one of the ones that students have the most questions about. Like, what is it? Why do I have to do this? I've submitted something and I'm still not seeing any action. What's going on? So of course, if you have questions, you let us know about it. But the important thing is to complete it early, because we can't offer you financial aid until verification is complete. And you want to make sure that it's done no later than July each year if you are selected, because we want to be able to have your financial aid in place before bills go out for the fall. We want to make sure that you're awarded and you know everything right up front before your bills come out for the fall. So I know it sounds like it's forever away from now, because you're in the middle of the fall semester of your first semester here. We're talking about July of next year, months and months away, but it will be here before you know it. And the best thing for you to do is to complete all this stuff while you're on campus and fully engaged, so that you don't have to worry about us over summer at all, and you can do your own thing, whether that's work or having a good time, whatever you want to do. You don't want to be thinking about financial aid and bills for next fall between May, June, and July each year. You want to take care of that stuff during the semester while you're here, so you have full access to all of us. And we want to make sure that you do that as well. So this is a review of your terms and conditions. So like I said, we can't award your financial aid until you have been, or until you completed verification. If you're not selected for verification, we can reward you right away. So if you're right on top of it, you do your FAFSA October 1st, then like I said, we're not going to actually award you at that point. We may not even get your FAFSA results that quickly. But once we start awarding, and typically that is toward the end of February or 1st of March, then we'll send you a notice and let you know that you've been awarded. These are your terms and conditions. Go out and review them in SelfService Banner, like we mentioned before. But these are the basics. I won't read all of them to you because you'll have an opportunity to read this for yourself. But it's just to let you know that do your FAFSA every year. You've got to maintain SAP. We'll talk about that more in a minute. What happens if you withdraw? What happens to your money if you don't meet certain measures? Just that you're aware of your rights and responsibilities to your financial aid. So these are those terms and conditions, and you will see these and have to accept them on SelfService Banner each year once your financial aid has been awarded. So make sure you do that, because we do require that you accept your terms and conditions to basically lock in your financial aid offer. We have a limited amount of institutional awards that we give out each year, like the Viking grant, appropriated grant, and a couple of others, that we have more students who are eligible than we have money to award. So you want to make sure that if we offer you those things, you complete your terms and conditions early and lock those in so that you don't run the risk of losing those, because we don't want that to happen. Because if you do your FAFSA early, you complete all these processes early, you should be first in line to receive those funds. So make sure you accept your terms and conditions, and we'll send reminders and instructions on how to do that each year, so that, because it's something you do once a year. We know we don't expect that you're going to remember how to do that. So we do send instructions. Just make sure that you're checking your email and following the instructions we send to you. So like I mentioned before, first-time borrowers, which you most likely are since this is your first semester at ECSU, you have to do entrance counseling and promissory note if you accept a student loan, and they only have to be done once. But there are a couple of other things that go through or that are required as part of your loans. As a first-time borrower, there is always a delay before we can disperse your loans for the first time, and that is 30 days from when classes start. So the first time that a first-time borrower would have received funds this year. So we started classes on August the 11th. The first time your loan could have paid as a first-time borrower would be November the 11th, or not November, September the 11th, sorry. So a month after classes start, basically. So that's nothing that you've done. That's just a requirement that as a first-time borrower, you have more time to digest what you're getting into and make sure that you know what you're doing when you borrow those funds to help pay for school. But as long as those steps are completed, you're able, be in place as expected. It just won't disperse until that 30 days has passed and you've completed the master promissory note and entrance counseling at studentloans.gov. So beyond federal, state, and our normal institutional aid, there are a number of endowed scholarships that are maintained by the ECSU Foundation. At some schools, or every school that has endowed scholarships, are a little bit different. So when we make an award offer after you completed verification, done your FAFSA, that's going to include federal Pell Grant if you're eligible, North Carolina Lottery Scholarship, or UNC Need-Based Grant if you're an in-state student and eligible for those, and then any loans and institutional aid that we have. Foundation scholarships are separate. They're not offered as part of your initial financial aid package. What we do is, once we are aware of the budgets for the foundation scholarships each year, we do a sweep of all students who have submitted their FAFSA, because we want to see everybody who's eligible. But the eligibility for these different foundation scholarships depend on the donor. So an endowed scholarship is one that a donor has given money to set up a scholarship fund, and they have certain criteria, and they're going to be different than our institutional aid. So like for Viking grant, you just have to be a student with need based on your FAFSA. But for some of the foundation scholarships, they are specific to students either from a certain place, maybe a certain high school, or in a certain program of study with a certain GPA. Some are for freshmen only, some are for juniors or seniors only, and some kind of fall somewhere in the middle. There are a number that don't have a lot of requirements, and there are some that are very strict that require students meet certain criteria. So what we do is each spring, once we have a number of FAFSAs, I have a good group of most students have submitted their FAFSAs, we start running reports that give us a bunch of information about every single student that's applied for their FAFSA. And we'll look to see which students meet the criteria for each award. And then we start making those awards and notifying students that that a endowed scholarship has been added to their financial aid package, in addition to other aid they may have been eligible for. So you don't have to do anything to be considered for these other than complete your FAFSA each year. And if you do qualify, then we will let you know. And if it is a renewable scholarship, we'll renew it each year so long as you meet the criteria for that. And we are working on setting up a website that has all of that information on it, so that so if you're chosen for an endowed scholarship, you'll see the name of that scholarship, and you can then go online and track what the criteria are. Because it may mean that you have to maintain a 3.0 GPA, but it may only ask that you maintain a 2.5, or it may require that you take at least 15 hours, or it may require that you participate in marching band. So like if you're in a marching band as a freshman, but don't plan to be as a sophomore, that could affect that endowed scholarship. So there's a lot of moving parts to those. So we manage all of that for you, and we'll let you know if you're eligible, if you continue to be eligible, and add those to your financial aid offer before bills go out so that everything's in place. So nothing you have to worry about. By virtue of being a student and completing your FAFSA, you will be considered for those endowed scholarships. Now, in the event that a scholarship, if we have multiple students who meet the criteria for one of these scholarships, like say you you're from that county that's part of the scholarship, you have the GPA, and you're in the right program of study, but there are maybe 4 or 5 students that meet that criteria, and we have enough funds to award 1 or 2 of those students, the scholarship is going to go to the student with the highest GPA, the most successful student. So what you want to do to be considered the top candidate for any of these scholarships is to make sure that you put forth the effort that you can and get the best grades that you can. So if your name does pop up on that list, we want to see a high GPA so that you can be a candidate for one of those scholarships. So it's important that you take advantage of your professors, your instructors, your student success folks, your advisor, tutoring, any of those processes and structures that are in place to help you achieve in the classroom, so that can be you can get a good GPA, have a great foundation, and be considered for these foundation scholarships. So just to talk about a little bit about what if your financial aid award is not enough. So say you've done your FAFSA, we've offered you grants, loans, scholarships, institutional aid, maybe even endowed scholarship, but what do you do if that's actually not enough? You have a few options that you could take advantage of. The school does offer a payment plan. So say all your financial aid pays for like 80%, 90% of what your balance is, but you still owe some. You can set up a payment plan for that. There are also loans available. There are Parent Plus loan, which is is a federal loan for parents that they have to apply for if they need to. That can be for the semester, it can be for the whole year, however your parents decide to do that. There are also alternative loans, which are private student loans that are offered to students or to parents to help pay for college as well. Or you can use any number or combination of those, several of which anything other than paying directly out of pocket. So you do have some options. If that's the case, once bills go out, definitely talk to us and find out what your options are. One or more of these may not be right for you, but we do have some tools internally that we can share to help you if you're looking for a private loan, tools that you can use to compare different lenders as to what those options are. We can put in your hands some information about Parent Plus loan if that's something that your parents might be interested in. We can also hook you up with student accounts so they can talk to you about a payment plan. So if that's something that might be a necessity, there are some options. So if your financial aid by itself after doing your FAFSA is not enough, that's not the end of the road. There are some additional things that are out there. Just contact us and we can walk you through that and kind of help you find the right option for you. So another part of financial aid is student employment. It's a little bit different. So it is considered financial aid, but it's not applied to your bill like a scholarship or grant would be. So federal work study is a program that basically you work on campus here at ECSU and the Department of Education provides us dollars to pay your wages. So that's why it's considered financial aid, because the institution's not paying your wage, the Department of Education is, but those monies aren't applied to your account. They actually are paid to you like any part-time job you might have. You work your hours and you're paid, and that money comes directly to you via a paycheck, direct deposit. But if you're interested in work study, we have a work study coordinator in the office that you can talk to about potentially applying for a job. We typically have a job fair each semester where students can come out. We talk about what the program is and what eligibility requirements there are, which are pretty low. And we also talk about how to apply for a job, what you need to apply, what you need to do after you've been selected. And we have those at the beginning of each semester. So if it's not something you're interested for this semester, as a first-time student, that may be something you think about for your freshman's second semester or even sophomore year. The only thing that you have to do is let us know you're interested and we'll check to see if you're eligible and then talk to you about how to apply and where to look for jobs. But basically, these are what you see here are just kind of the requirements about being eligible for work study. So basically, work study is a need-based program. So your FAFSA results are, well, you have to do your FAFSA. And then we take a look at your FAFSA to make sure that you're eligible. So like it's mentioned here, your cost of attendance minus your EFC equals your need. And we make that determination. We don't expect you to figure that out for yourself. If you're interested in work study, let us know. We'll let you know if you're eligible or not, and then what kind of your next steps would be. But basically, like I mentioned before, typical employment starts beginning of fall, but we still have jobs that open up in the spring. If you're hired for a job and do a good job, then you can continue to work for that supervisor each year that you're here if you want to. That's up to you. There are some services available from career services that you might want to take advantage of, like help you with resume writing, that sort of thing. But just keep in mind that there are on-campus jobs available. We typically have around 200 student employees each year and have more than enough funds to support those students. Most jobs on campus pay $10 an hour. You can work up to 20 hours a week, and it has to fit in with your school schedule. So it is an opportunity if you don't already have a part-time job off campus, or if you're interested in maybe doing something. Most of the jobs are like office work and things around campus. There are some positions that are research-based where you work with a faculty member that's doing research and you aid them in that. And there are some with the Wellness Center where they have programs that we do outside. So there are a lot of different options. So definitely check our website out and see what those are if you're interested. Come by and say yes, or contact us, reach out, and we can talk to you about what those positions are and kind of how to get started if you're interested. So now I want to talk to you about how your academic choices are impacted or can impact your financial aid. So there are a few things that we'll go over here in this part of the conversation. But as a first-time student, you are not going to be thinking about these things at this point, okay? But depending on how well you do in a class this semester, you may have to retake a course at some point, maybe next semester. It may not be until down the road. But an important caveat to your financial aid is how taking a repeated class can impact your aid. So the basics are that financial aid can pay for any class up to 2 times, or if you passing it 2 times. If you take a class and fail or withdraw from that class 3 semesters in a row, your financial aid will still pay for it until you have passed the class twice. So basically, if you were to take a class this semester and need to repeat it, then you'll have an opportunity to do that and still receive financial. Excuse me. But just keep in mind, like I said, this is your first semester. This may not come up, but if you ever have to take a class over, contact us, talk to us, and we can let you know where you are in the process. For the vast majority of students, this doesn't come into play, because if you take a class and do poorly once, students typically do much better the second time and don't have to take a class a third time. On a rare occasion that might happen, because like certain classes or certain programs require that you make at least a C or better for your degree. But if you do ever have to take a repeated class, just talk to us and we can walk you through what that looks like. You want to pause a moment, Vanessa? Okay. So leading on from repeated coursework, the biggest thing that you have to make sure you maintain is satisfactory academic progress. And that's a separate process from academic standing, although they have very similar criteria. But the Department of Education requires that students meet or maintain certain measures to continue to receive financial aid. You have to maintain at least a cumulative GPA of 2.0, and then you have to pass at least 2/3 of all your classes. And the last bullet point says that you have to complete your classes within 150% of your program length. So if it's a 4-year program, you can only receive financial aid up to 6 years. That one, you don't have to worry about for quite a number of years. Don't worry about it too much, but we do maintain that one as well. The biggest things for you are make sure you have at least a 2.0 GPA, and this is not per semester, but it's cumulative. But as your first semester, it's very important that you have a really strong GPA to start with. That way, if you have a weaker semester or a bad semester, then your cumulative GPA won't be as impacted as much. So it's important that you start strong now to keep that up. And then passing 2/3 of your classes. So say you take 15 hours, you have to pass at least 9 hours each semester to maintain that pace of 67%. Now we keep up with all this for you, and we'll let you know anytime that you fall below, because what happens is your first semester, if you don't do well and you don't meet those measures, you don't lose your financial aid right away. You go into what's called a warning status. So at the end of the fall semester, we measure your grades and your pass rate. And if you're below either one of those measures, we let you know, hey, you're in financial aid warning for the spring. Your financial aid stays the same. You still get your financial aid for the spring. But if you don't have an improvement by the end of spring, then you could lose your financial aid going forward. So you want to make sure that during that warning semester, you take advantage of your professors, tutoring, student success, your advisors, to make sure that you are doing all that you can to have a really strong GPA, so that you can continue to receive financial aid. Because at the end of that second semester, if you're still below either that 2.0 GPA or the 67% pass rate, one or the other or both, then you would lose your financial aid. So make sure you're keeping up with that. You want to check your midterm grades, figure out kind of where you are. At the end of this semester, if you end up in a warning status, come by and talk to us. It's very important that you know what your financial aid situation is before each semester. So if you end up in a warning status, like I said, we will let you know via email if you end up in a warning status. If for some reason you fail to get back in good standing by the end of that second semester and your financial aid suspended, we email you, we mail you a letter home with the appeal paperwork attached, because there are certain circumstances that you may have performed poorly, but that was outside of your control, and you can appeal for a probation semester if one of those situations occurred to you. So what does that look like? The appeal, like I said, has to be extenuating circumstances, something that happened to you that was outside of your control that caused you to have a bad semester. Like I said, if your financial aid is suspended, we actually send you the form so that you have that and explain how to submit an appeal, what reasons you can use to appeal. And that those can range, but it could be something happened to you. You were in the hospital. You could have been hurt or injured. Something could have happened to your family that would have caused you to have to come out of school, or could have been could have made being successful in the classroom more difficult. The situation going on with COVID for students that were enrolled last spring, where we had to switch from in-person instruction to online, that change in mode of instruction, that was something that could be considered for a SAP appeal. So a lot of different reasons, that things that can happen that are reasons that can be considered for an appeal. But the most important thing is that if something like that happened to you and you end up in a bad financial aid status, talk to us and let us know so that we can let you know how you can appeal to receive financial aid. Because say something like that did happen, you can be granted a probationary semester or 2 or 3 to get back in good standing, so that you have a chance to continue to receive financial aid while you work on getting your GPA or your pass rate back in good standing. So it's not the end all be all. There are ways to continue to receive your financial aid under certain circumstances. So like I mentioned, what those circumstances are, like I said, serious illness or death in the family, like I mentioned, being in the hospital, if you're a victim of a crime or natural disaster. Unfortunately, due to our location in North Carolina, we do see hurricanes from time to time, and that can impact classroom and it can impact performance. We've had students in the past that, due to the effects of a hurricane on their home, it may not be here in Elizabeth City, but it may be back home somewhere else in North Carolina, where they had to go back home and couldn't continue a semester. And that impacted their grades and their pass rate. But that's something that we can consider for a financial aid appeal. And there are work-related difficulties. There are all sorts of things that you may not realize is something, but you want to definitely talk to us so that you can tell us what was going on. And if that's something that you can submit an appeal for, we'll tell you how to do that. But there are certain things that are not. Like satisfactory academic progress is a federal regulation. It's not something ECSU set up. So there are guidelines that we have to follow. So part of the circumstances that we can't consider are laid out by the Department of Education. And they tell us pretty much straight up that lack of transportation, you know that coming in. Losing your transportation is different. But if you're unable to handle classwork because college is hard, that's not something we can consider. So we're talking about outside forces that impacted your ability to do what you needed to do, attend class, do your homework, those sorts of things. So things that held you back from that, separate from any choices that you would have made. So just keep that in mind. Again, if you end up in a bad financial aid status and you're thinking about appealing, you want to talk to us about the situation so that we can let you know if that's appealable and help you to go through that process. The other important thing is withdrawal. If for some reason you can't continue the semester, like I mentioned before, hurricane, something happened and you can't continue taking classes. Withdrawing does have an effect on your financial aid. Withdrawing is withdrawing from the university, stopping attendance in all your classes. Dropping a class during drop add, or withdrawing from a class mid-semester because you're not doing well or for some other reason doesn't fit your schedule. That's not what we're talking about. This is specifically you stop attending all your classes at some point before the term is over. And what happens in that situation is your financial aid is awarded to you assuming that you are going to continue and complete the whole semester. If you don't, we have to do a calculation to find out how much of your aid that you were awarded, how much of that you've actually earned and are entitled to. And anything that's unearned, we have to return back to the Department of Ed. And what can happen is if a student doesn't complete the whole semester, they can end up in a situation where we have to send back financial aid that they originally received and may have gotten a refund from, and we have to send monies back and you end up owing the college back for those dollars. So if you were ever in a situation where you're thinking about you may stop attending all your classes, you may have to withdraw for medical reasons or some other reason, you want to talk to us first. Come by and see us, call us, hit us up on the Zoom line. Let us know that you're thinking about or you have to stop attending all your classes, and we can tell you right then how that's going to impact your financial aid. So if you're considering that or something happens where you have to withdraw, just know that that will impact your financial aid, could leave you with a balance due back to the university. You want to make sure you know what that is before you withdraw or very shortly after. It's something that, if it's something that's out of your hands and kind of happens quickly, talk to us so you can find out what the repercussions of that are. But again, this refers to specifically completely stopping attendance in all your classes during the semester. If you attend through the end of fall semester into spring semester, that's not a withdrawal. If you drop a class at drop add, or if you take a W in a class during mid-semester or 2, that's not withdrawing. We're talking specifically about not attending or quitting attendance in all your classes. That's a withdrawal. So if that ever happens or is something that you might have to do for some reason, definitely talk to us so we can let you know how that's going to affect your financial aid. So before I close, just want to get you with some important dates, most of which I mentioned already before. The FAFSA is available each year on October 1st. We have a priority deadline, and we start awarding toward the end of February. So you want to make sure that your FAFSA is done and verification is complete if you can by March 1st, because that priority deadline can impact institutional aid. And then you want to make sure that if you haven't done any of this stuff, you want to make sure all of it is completed by July 1st, because that's when bills go out, because we want to make sure that your financial aid is in place before your fall bill goes out each year. And then August 1st is typically when bills are due. So make sure that you have everything done and in place, and you've talked to us if you need some additional resources, like we talked about that Parent Plus loan or the alternative loans, those private loans, or a payment plan. Make sure you've spoken with us about that if you need those resources prior to October 1st, because that's when bills are due, and that's when they will start dropping classes for students who have not settled their bill. So those are the important dates each year that you're going to be here at ECSU. So make sure that you are aware of what those dates are, what they mean, and what you need to do to stay ahead of them. And then lastly, each student is assigned a counselor by their last name. So you have a person in our office that handles all your verification, staff appeal questions. If you have a withdrawal, this person is going to be your counselor the whole time that you're here. These are all seasoned vets. They all have 10+ years experience. So basically, if you need us, please know how to find us. So you've got our contact information on this slide. You've got your counselor's email. Most likely you have emailed with your counselor before this point, but make sure you have our number. You got a link to our Zoom lobby if you need us. If you need to make an appointment, you can find us on E4U and just choose your counselor and select an available appointment time. You can set up an appointment, and that appointment can be a phone call or over the Zoom line. We would prefer you not come by in person due to COVID. But if you absolutely have to, we can see you as long as you're taking the appropriate precautions of wearing your mask and keeping your distance. But here you have our contact information. And the most important thing I can leave you with is, if you have a question, don't be afraid to hit us up, because that's what we're here for. You know, we process and administer financial aid, but half of our job is education. Our job is to help you understand your responsibilities and your rights and understand this whole financial aid thing, so that you can get all the financial aid dollars you are eligible for to help you pay for college. So please don't be afraid to contact us and let us know if you have any questions, because we want to help educate you about processes, about available aid, what you can do to make sure you maintain your aid. That's our role, is to help you through this process. So don't be afraid to ask. We get a lot of questions, but none of them are dumb questions. Don't be embarrassed to talk to us about anything, because everything that you talk to us about is confidential. Like it might have having to do with an appeal or something like that. We may have to ask a lot of invasive questions about your family income due to verification, but don't take that personally. That's not going to get shared beyond our office. But please do contact us and let us know how we can help. Any question that you might have, simple, even if you asked the question before, don't be afraid to reach out to us and let us know how we can help. And that is the end of my presentation. So I'd like